Number 18, Oklahoma, at number 14, Tennessee, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time on ABC. Very, very simply put, this is a potential playoff elimination game for both programs. Both Oklahoma and Tennessee are 6-2 on the season so far, and considering no 3-loss team made the playoff last year as an at-large selection, at least, Saturday night's game could be a playoff eliminator for both programs.
Absolutely. I think that's the big story here. And now maybe Oklahoma, with the tough schedule that they have and so many tough games left on there.
But even LSU is not as great anymore, too.
Right. I mean, in some of the previous, those Missouri also, I think they have Missouri on the schedule, and they're going to be playing a true freshman quarterback in Matt Zoller. So maybe they would have a case. Probably not, especially with some developments in other conferences. But, no, this is a huge game. I mean, this really for both teams is I'm with you. I think this is an elimination game. We had one that we previewed last week in the Big Ten with Illinois and Washington. I think you have a similar vibe here because also Oklahoma, if they were to lose this game, I don't know that we'd have a whole lot of faith in them bouncing back to beat, an Alabama or an LSU anyway with the way their offense is going. And Tennessee, look, they've had some struggles on defense. They've got 2 losses to Alabama and Georgia, but this is a big opportunity for them to put one more notch in the belt, and then you really roll towards then, they have a game at Florida, which is always tricky, and then the Vanderbilt game at the very end of the season looms pretty large. But for now, this is a massive game that I do believe most likely that the loser would be eliminated from playoff contention.
You have the Tennessee offense with Joey Aguilar, who's been fantastic this year for the Volunteers. What should we know for him against what's been also a very great Oklahoma defense?
Yeah, no, it's certainly been a great defense for Oklahoma. They've been very good at preventing explosive plays really until last week. But you look at the difference in their pass rush, in their wins and some of the losses. Go back to a game against Auburn where they had, a school record, 10 sacks, right? They really dominated South Carolina in the pass rush. I believe it was 5 or 6 sacks. It was 6 sacks in that game. But then you look at the Texas game, and you look at last week's game against Ole Miss, they only had 1 sack in each of those games. R. Mason Thomas and that defensive line just couldn't quite get home. Arch Manning moved around the pocket very well, as did Trinidad Chambliss last week. And you look at Joey Aguilar, how good he's been when protected this year. A 92 passing grade, an elite passing grade in clean pockets, 10 big-time throws, 2 turnover-worthy plays is just outstanding. So when you look at it from that angle, if it's going to be like the Texas game and like the Ole Miss game, and Aguilar is going to be clean back there and allowed to take deep shots down the field on this defense, I think Oklahoma could have a big problem. They're going to need to first, and then you talk about Deshaun Bishop and this Tennessee run game too, putting them in good situations. That's a whole nother problem because Kawan Lacey had a solid game against Oklahoma last week as well. That's the biggest part to me, though, is can they get to those obvious passing situations? Can they get to the blitz looks where they can put some heat on Aguilar? Because if he's standing back there in the pocket with a clean pocket, I think Oklahoma's in big trouble.
Yeah, I think so too. I have Oklahoma's offense, and really it's a recently struggling John Mateer against a recently struggling Tennessee secondary. There's no way to sugarcoat it right now. John Mateer has not been very good since he returned from the injury to his throwing hand that required surgery. 36.4 passing grade in the 3 games since his return is the worst in the Power 4. So the lowest passing grade in the Power 4 since he returned from his injury. 8 turnover-worthy plays since his return are tied for the most among all quarterbacks in the country. So 1 big-time throw, 8 turnover-worthy plays over the last 3 weeks. John Mateer has not been very good at all since his return from that hand injury, but Tennessee's secondary has equally struggled over the last 3 weeks. Right now, a 50.4 coverage grade for the Volunteers since Week 7. That's the second worst in the Power 4. They've allowed at least 31 points each to Arkansas, Kentucky, and Alabama. Tennessee also had a 46.5 coverage grade in their loss to Georgia earlier this year, too, and what was a shootout, too. So Tennessee's had major problems in their secondary this year. The Volunteers very, very clearly missed their star corner in Jermod McCoy, who is still a projected top 20 pick in the 2026 NFL draft, despite missing all of this year so far with a torn ACL that he suffered in January. Without him, this secondary, I know they got Colton Hood, who's a pretty good player, but other than that, Dalton, they have really struggled in that secondary this year.
Yeah, they have found themselves in a lot of shootouts, even in their losses, especially you go back to the Georgia loss, right, 44-41, and I think that's going to be a big story. You've got almost the stoppable object against the movable force, or maybe it's the other way around. Yeah, the movable object against the stoppable force, something like that. But either way, I mean, that's what you get is inconsistency on both sides in pass defense for Tennessee, and really, to me, the entire Oklahoma offense. I've talked about the struggles and inconsistency of their run game. I thought last week, outside of the one big touchdown run from Xavier Robinson, it was same old struggles in the run game against Ole Miss. Isaiah Sategna's really become their biggest playmaker. Deion Burks under 65 receiving yards in 6 straight games. Jaron Canick's gone, a little bit cold lately too, but it's just the entirety of Oklahoma's offense. Can they figure out, besides Mateer scrambling and the occasional big play, can they figure out any consistency, especially against a vulnerable defense in Tennessee, like you mentioned?
So ultimately, Dalton, what could be a playoff elimination game for both Tennessee and Oklahoma, who will win and keep their season alive?
I still really like Josh Josephs and this Tennessee defensive line against, and I think they've still got an advantage over Oklahoma's offensive line, especially when you talk about the run game and how good those guys up front are for Tennessee. Dominic Bailey, you've got Tyree West up there as well. So I do think there are some advantages here, even for Tennessee's defense, maybe more so in the front seven than the secondary. And honestly, I kind of go into this pick with this logic. Oklahoma has shown us in all their big games that they're good for roughly 24 points, right? Do we feel like Tennessee's getting to at least, even against this defense, to at least 27?
Yeah.
I feel pretty good about that. I'm taking it 35-24 Tennessee. I like them at home. I like that if they just protect Joey Aguilar well enough, and especially if it's only one sack like it was against Texas and Ole Miss for Oklahoma, they're in serious trouble. I just like the ceiling of Tennessee's offense better. I think John Mateer, yes, right now playing not 100% is an issue. It's obviously an issue with him throwing the football, but I think there are still more problems on this Oklahoma offense, and to me, it's not that different from the struggles LSU has had on offense. I'm going 35-24 Volunteers.
I actually have it closer. It feels like the first time in the show today. I have it Tennessee winning this one, though, 34-27. I think Tennessee's offense is on fire right now. Oklahoma's offense is not on fire right now. Now, there is opportunities for John Mateer to bounce back a little bit in this game against a vulnerable Tennessee secondary, but I don't think it'll be enough to match Tennessee's offense in this one. So I have Tennessee winning this one 34-27. Let's get our opinion from our resident Tennessee fan, producer Eli, back there. Eli, how do you feel going into this game?
I feel pretty good. You guys know I'm not the biggest Oklahoma fan in terms of just like, I think their defense is awesome. I'm not a believer in that offense personally. I think Tennessee should cover this game. I mean, I know that Oklahoma defense is good. I think they can cause problems, but if they can keep Aguilar clean, I mean, that's key to the game. What Dalton said, I think is it. And I kind of like the matchup for us, especially with Mateer not really playing as good as he was at the beginning of the year. I think Tennessee covers this one.
I agree. I think there is just a cap, and I know Tennessee's the secondaries has been struggling lately, and it's not great, but I just think there's a cap on what this Oklahoma offense is capable of. I mean, you just look at Michigan, 24, Auburn, 24, only 6 against Texas, South Carolina, 26, Ole Miss, 26. It just feels like it's the same way I feel about LSU, where I go that 24 to 27-ish range. That's the ceiling. That's what they're going to put up. Maybe they'll put up again on the high end of it, 26, 27 points again, but I like Tennessee's ability to get there and surpass that. They've only scored less than 34 one time this season, and that was against Alabama.
Yeah, I'm excited to watch an individual match I'm excited to watch is the true freshman right tackle David Sanders, who actually played really well this year, who's a 5-star recruit coming out of high school, against R. Mason Thomas and that Oklahoma defensive line, too. It could be fun.
Agreed. Yeah. No, absolutely. If they can get pressure, then that's when they start to have a shot, right? Last week you saw when the moments they did get pressure, they had a chance. It just didn't come often enough, and that was the same case against Arch Manning. And they got pressure on Arch Manning, but they couldn't bring him down. They have to be able to bring Aguilar down to win this game.
So we're all going with Tennessee in this one. Dalton, we have some updates in the chat right now. Andrew Harbaugh saying, listen, Dalton, we hit a ton in 2024. We couldn't pitch, and now in 2025 we were lights out pitching, and then couldn't hit the broadside of a barn.
That's all right. When I went to
Pirates.
when I went to that Mets series in Pittsburgh, you beat us 30-3. So I have all the respect in the world for you because I don't really have any choice.
And Jay Thomas in the chat shouting out, I sat through a 14-inning game one time to watch Daniel Murphy commit a game-losing error. I'm sure Dalton will appreciate that.
Yeah, and the worst part about that is I would remember the specific instance, but I'm sure that happened more than once because Murph was a fantastic hitter, and that was an entire team in those seasons.
I'm guessing he's a Met, I'm guessing?
Yeah, he was our second baseman for a while, and that was a team. And Murph could really hit. The whole team could really. It was like the story of that 2015 team that went to the World Series is we had everything, but our defense was just not good.
Is he like a toned-down version of Derek Jeter, where it's like a great hitter but just a terrible fielder?
I mean, kind of. That's kind of like getting into lofty territory, but yeah, kind of.
I'm not saying as good as Jeter was.
He was one of those players who didn't necessarily. His position was hitter. He didn't have. We tried him in left field. It didn't work. We already had a first baseman. His second base, so he was there by default. It was kind of one of those things. But yeah, those are the ones that are rough. When you get to those games in extra innings, when you lose by an error, a hit by pitch with the bases loaded, or so, those are actually worse than just giving up like the walk-off bomb.
I mean, not a lot of errors, at least in the extra innings yesterday, man. I mean, like I said before, some of the defensive plays we saw last night were crazy.
Oh yeah, no,
unbelievable plays.
It was well, and now they got to turn around and play another one.
I know.
Jeez.
God, I can't wait. I can't wait for that game tonight. I can't believe I'm saying that too. I'm not really a big baseball game fan, but this World Series right now has been unbelievable so far.